Welcome. I'm Josh Kleinfeld, pastor at Stillmeadow Church of the Nazarene. We're in a very unique time in history, but as Christians, our mission does not change. The call to be disciples of Jesus and to make disciples remains. But now we've got to figure out, what does it look like to follow Jesus as individuals and families in a pandemic? So we're actually set up to do a series of podcasts each week to tackle topics ranging from families to fitness and everything in between. And then we're going to do talkcasts where people join us to listen in and ask questions with our incredible guests like Burdett and Nedra that we have today. And each week, our hope is that we want to walk away with one thing. Today's topic has to do with the reality that all the routines, all the rhythms that we were used to have now been tossed aside. And now the question is, what kind of rhythm does a family need to flourish through this time? So my guests for today are Burdett and Nedra Lar, and they've been serving in ministry together for what, 23 years? Is that right? Burdett's an ordained pastor in the Church of the Nazarene, and both Burdett and Nedra have worked as marriage and family therapists for over 18 years at New Beginnings Therapy Services, which is actually hosted at Stillmeadow Church of the Nazarene. And so it's incredible to have you guys here with us today. And thank you too. You guys also served as small group leaders for our parenting teens class. So you guys are uniquely positioned to offer incredible wisdom, I think, for families to flourish in this time. And for those of you who are listening in, I do want you to know, if you are not yet plugged into a small group, you can actually join Burdett and Nedra's group on Zoom on Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. with all of our other Sunday morning small groups. And they're going to be doing a follow-up group, Parenting Through the Pandemic. And if you're interested in that, you can sign up for it by emailing Nedra at Nedra, Nedra, 1221 @gmail.com. So, all right. Are you guys ready for this?
We're ready.
All right. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good, all things considered, right?
First couple of weeks were, a challenge like they were for everybody, trying to figure all of this out, a time of adjustment, bringing our college son home to do online classes and continuing schooling with our homeschooler who loves to be very social. So a lot of adjustments like all families, and we're right in there in the mix with everyone else.
Yeah, you guys did homeschool for a while, and now you're homeschooling a college student, which you didn't
expect.
Mostly self-study. He's on his own. So
yeah, that's true. Me too. I've got my family positioned all throughout the house right now, so we've had experience a divine disruption from our children during this conversation. And so, well, why don't we get right to the question at hand? As we're looking at all the routines and rhythms that have been tossed aside, what kind of rhythms do you have that you're recommending for families to flourish through this time? I'm curious.
Well, we have 5 different ones, and we're going to go through them kind of one at a time.
Okay.
And the first one we want to talk about is what we're going to refer to as the empathy rhythm. And we really see this as the most important rhythm that a family can have, especially right now. So we want to kind of start to define what that looks like and what we're meaning by that when we talk about empathy as a family rhythm, as really a family way of life in really creating an atmosphere of empathy in our home. So it's really an opportunity that we have right now to share our feelings and hopefully grow closer to one another through this specific experience. Every family is feeling anxious and stressed and overwhelmed. And as you've been sharing on Sunday mornings, we're also really grieving through this time. We have a lot of losses and a lot of disappointments that we're needing to face. And if we're not talking about those things and being honest about them and are allowing ourselves to deal with our feelings, then it comes out in other ways like irritability and short-temperedness and all those negative things that start to go, especially when we're all at home together all the time, so much of the time. And if we're not, then we're away in stressful situations and coming home exhausted. So it's pretty much one or the other right now, or some of both. So tensions are really high right now and tolerance is really low. But that's also very normal in times of stress and in grief. So it's really important for us to be talking about how we're feeling specific to our losses and our disappointments.
So when you use that term empathy, Burdette, you and I, when we were talking about this the other day, you had a really cool image for it. Can you help me understand what you mean by empathy?
Yeah, and I think an easy way of doing that is kind of comparing it with sympathy to get an understanding of that. Because sympathy is really kind of caring from a distance in a way. There's not a lot of personal investment in that. But empathy is where we're much more invested in that. And so this analogy kind of goes that if someone's drowning in a lake and you see them, you don't really know who they are maybe, but you see them drowning in a lake, but you're like, oh, there's some concern there on your part. Oh my goodness, someone's drowning. But a sympathetic response might be, oh my goodness, okay, where's a life ring? Here, I need to throw it to you. It might be 5 feet away, but you can get to it. Just help yourself. You can do it. I've done something, but I'm caring from a distance. Empathy is like when I'm investing myself and I jump in and I go to where the person is. And empathy in an emotional way means I jump into that situation and I allow myself to journey to where they are emotionally. Like I'm trying to understand what they're going through, how things are impacting them. It's not really a time for me to be correcting or challenging a position or something, but it's really just an open door to understand that. So to kind of jump in and to go where they are, and it doesn't mean we drown together. It means that we together kind of come to the shore to a healthy place, So one of the things I wanted to add to that though is something that we'll make available online here, a little handout so it can be printed out and so forth. It's called a tune, and I'm just going to show it like that. That you can't read it, I know, but you see it coming. And really what that is John Gottman, a marriage scientist, put this together. We're really looking at kind of breaking down, if we have trouble allowing ourselves to emotionally connect with someone, this is just a helpful tool to kind of break down that process to be able to get to that place of empathy. So wanted to include that.
Wow. Do you mind sharing a couple of those tips from there? That you said it's attunement, or is that what you said?
It's called a tune, and I'll say it real quick so we don't take too much time here. But it's an what's it, an acronym or a okay. So each letter spells out something there. So awareness of emotion. So we just need to be aware, and then we need to turn towards the emotion instead of turning away. Sometimes we have that tendency, there's emotion. I'm uncomfortable with that. So I turn away instead of turn towards, and then kind of tolerating the emotion. In other words, I'm just there with it. I don't need to fix it. I don't need to do anything. I'm just kind of there with it. But then working to more fully understand that emotion can be asking questions about the emotion and so forth. And if those questions are more trying to clarify my position, that's not what we're doing. We're asking questions to try to clarify, maybe in a family, what's our child going through? What are they experiencing? We might not like necessarily all their thoughts, but that right now is not the time to do that, to challenge that. It's the time to try to understand them. So it's kind of a non-defensive listening. And then it kind of then ultimately leads to this empathy, where they really get the idea, like we get them, as the parents, we get where they're coming from. We get what they're going through. And that is so affirming to our children, or anyone, but in this situation, we're looking at our children. And that can be such a powerful thing. So it doesn't mean that we can't then, once we get to that place of empathy and we really kind of get it and they know we get where they're at, then we can talk to them about what they're going through and maybe, try to help them through it. But at first, being able to connect with them empathically. So
that's powerful. I appreciate that. Do you have anything else to say about empathy before your next rhythm?
I think that's good.
We'll stop there. There's so much more we could say, but I think the only other thing I want to say is that for parents, it's choosing to be vulnerable and talk about how they're experiencing things, obviously in an age appropriate way for their kids, and to let them in on their own feelings and being vulnerable enough to do that, because we are our kids' role models. And so I think it's important for us to be talking too about how we're feeling and teaching them the value of empathy in how we do that for them, but allowing them to do that for us. Again, in appropriate ways. We don't want to overload our kids with our emotions and feelings.
Right.
But it's that also that reminder that we as adults need to be reaching out, getting the help and the support that we need during this time to deal with our emotion, our loss, our stress, so that we can be emotionally available for our kids.
Wow, that's good. That's really good. Can you, I think I know where we're going with the next one, and take us to the next rhythm, because I think it really is a great segue from that one.
Exactly, it is, and that's even what I was going to say. It's the spiritual rhythm, the spiritual rhythms that we create in our home, and empathy does flow right into creating. It's kind of taking those emotions, and then what do we do with that on a spiritual level? Because when we share about our feelings, it's great to take time to pray through them then. We really have this opportunity right now to be praying through these things for ourselves, and then as we're aware of needs for other people who are hurting, who are sick, who are scared. We have such a valuable opportunity, as we always do, but now I think it's in front of us even more on an even deeper level, teaching our kids that this is what we do as people, as God's people, as the family of God. And for our own family, we take these things to God and we seek his help and his comfort. And so we're praying together. We're taking the time to do that after we talk. And then we're finding supportive scriptures. We're standing on God's promises to encourage our spirits, to fill us back up so that we can continue moving forward as a family, and then how we're able to do that for others. So I think Burdett has a few thoughts with it too.
Well, I was just going to mention about, family devotions. Hopefully that's been around and people are aware of that and that kind of thing. And people can have different methodologies for that. But really, a simple method right now that can be really useful, especially if people aren't doing family devotions, is just looking up, like doing a little bit of research. What about faith through hard times? What are some stories that are in the Bible? Because it's packed full of stories. Okay, and stories are awesome with kids, right? And we like stories too. So taking those, looking for that, faith through hard times stories, reading the story together as a family, and then just kind of saying, what do you get out of that? And what do you think that could, what does that story tell us about our situation, and what can we do? And things like that. It's just a simple way of getting together as a family, looking into God's word, and yet applying it very directly to help through this time. So anyway,
I really
a suggestion, I'm sorry, a suggestion there would be at least once a week where we're doing that together, but a few times a week, that would be even better. So.
And I think the other spiritual conversation that can go along with that is, what do we see God doing in the midst of? How do we see his faithfulness? How do we see his love for us, his provisions? And keep that in front of all of us as a family, which leads into the other part of a spiritual rhythm in the home, is that of practicing gratitude. Lots of gratitude. You've brought up, which I love and I'm using all the time, the hashtag not canceled, right? And having a list or doing a family journal, and that you can keep them forever to look back at this time and see what God was doing, to have dinner conversations about what are we grateful for today? What are God's promises, and how do we see his faithfulness coming out of this today?
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I mean, neuroscience shows things. There's a connection between joy and happiness and gratitude. And so,
absolutely
thankful as individuals and as a family actually is a mood shifter. and actually
Absolutely.
it actually really helps in that whole empathy conversation.
Right.
So it's kind of
Right.
how God wired us. He knew what he was doing.
He sure did. And that's
Definitely.
why I
Yeah.
think the rhythms that have come out, the ones that we're talking about today, are the ones that we see are primary for family. But in order to be a healthy family,
Yes.
in order to really live that full life that Jesus said that we could have and we could live with him, because all of these things do keep us in a good place. They keep us grounded in the good life that the Lord wants us to have.
You know, I think it's kind of neat as you guys were describing empathy and you moved into the spiritual rhythm. I think that Jesus, in his incarnation, that was like the greatest expression of empathy. To go to that idea of
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
going into the lake.
Mm.
And he came, and I love how he said, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, which I think is the next rhythm.
It sure is. It sure is.
Thanks for that lead in there, Josh. Good job.
It sure is. You know, the years that I worked as a bereavement counselor for hospice, there's so many blessings in that kind of work, but there's a lot of heart work involved in that as well. But I kept a quote on my desk by Booker T. Washington, and I just love it. It says, "Those who are happiest are those who do the most for others." And it is so true. And we all have those service opportunities in big ways and small ways, because really it's all big. It's all big when we're serving out of love and for the Lord. And so, like you were talking about, more research has been found that serving others, it lessens our own depression. It gets us focused outside of ourselves. Depression, we have a tendency to turn inward when we're depressed, and when we can focus outward and serve, it helps us. It helps us actually to feel better. And so, doing things right now that are an encouragement to people, that can be as simple right now as checking in with friends over text, doing Zoom calls with family, to, you know, providing meals if we're able to for those who are less in need, and actually still being involved in a service project, you know, using the precautions to stay safe and stay healthy. But some of us are able to do that. So it's serving in all kinds of ways like that. And then it's even, we have other unique opportunities right now to encourage each other, even in our neighborhood. I've seen videos of people going out at a certain time in their neighborhood and dancing on the sidewalks together and sharing some music and, you know, shouting to each other just to encourage each other. Sidewalk drawings, the Spread the Love movement is going through social media now, putting teddy bears in windows for kids to go on bear hunts. These are the beautiful things that we can do to encourage each other through these times.
Did you hear someone sharing their music in my neighborhood? Oh, and that was, I think, one of the things. I hear a lot of creativity in there. Before we move to the creative rhythm, Pastor Britt, did you have anything to say about the serving rhythm before we got?
I really wasn't planning on saying anything there. Just letting that up to my wonderful wife, Nedra.
You're doing great. So, by the way, for anybody who's watching or listening, this is all of our first podcast. So, let's talk about. We've got 3 rhythms so far: the empathy rhythm, the spiritual rhythm, the serving rhythm, and then the 4th rhythm is the creative rhythm. What do you mean by that?
Well, really, it's just finding, I'd say, fun, active things to do. Some activities that we can do together. Sometimes it's together, sometimes it's individual, of course, but things that are pleasant and enjoyable. You know, there's enough heavy stuff going on. We need some light stuff. And so, like, right when this first started, I didn't know what was going to happen. So I'm trying to be creative. That's not my forte. Okay. But I'm trying to be creative. And So I'm looking for things that we could do, with kids my age, well, not my age,
Kids my age.
kids I have. So
We're kids at heart.
So well, then I was looking at 3D puzzles, and so we looked, we went and ordered some 3D puzzles. This is like that old projector thing, film projector, but it even makes the sounds. And it works.
Oh my gosh!
So obviously you couldn't see that, but it's a cute thing. My other one son put a marble puzzle together, and then but we had to order these, so it was one of those things. But then I got one for Nedra that's just a little piano put together, a grand piano. It just sits there and looks nice.
Does it play?
It does not play.
No, not that advanced. But there's things like that. That's just a thing we could do together, and that's what we did. We sat down and we spent hours putting these things together. And that's like one thing. There's definitely arts and crafts, looking things up online. There's so many resources out there for arts and craft ideas. There are things that are around home. And so doing that kind of thing together, getting ideas from YouTube and so forth.
Right. It's a time to use our creativity. Nathan has made for us an escape room, which he has done for some of his friends, and he's very anxious to set it up for his dad and I to do. So that will probably be this weekend's activity.
That's utilizing our whole basement. Things that he could figure out down here. Now, he did this before this event, but we haven't done it yet. So he's excited about putting it together again for us, so we can walk through this and see if we can escape in the allotted time from our basement.
That is hilarious. And I've heard of people, and we actually did this the other day. Families connecting and playing games over like Zoom or Facebook, like that. Right. So
there's
a lot of creative things.
Yes, we have, we all have our favorite artists and musicians. A lot of Christian artists right now are doing social media concerts. It's a great way to connect with our worship and music that we love, things, people that we're familiar with. It's a unique experience.
Yeah, it really is. So now I think there's one more rhythm / practice / routine.
One more. We've kind of gone from the abstract to the more practical, I think, as we've gone. And this one is very practical. It's the planning rhythm. It's how do we do life in these days, where many parents are now working from home and they're trying to school their kids at the same time. And how do we do all this? How should we be structured? And I think everyone's trying to figure that out. It's taken us some time to do that too. Just a couple notes that I want to make before Burdette goes over actually talking about a schedule is in the way of schooling. I just really want to encourage parents that you have such a heavy load right now and you can't do it all and do it well. And so learning at home can't look like traditional schooling brought home.
Seems like my side has frozen, but I don't. Okay, so here, go back. You said learning at home does not have to look like traditional school, and then it froze. So
okay, yeah. So when you're bringing schooling home, it looks very different. You're doing it for shorter periods of time, so you might do it by hours. It's not going to take up the whole day. I know teachers now are getting more involved, and there is more of a rhythm going with that. But there are so many ways to learn. I just encourage parents to, if you're having a bad day, you may have to call it quits for the day with school. And it may be when you get more creative, and it may be finding more creative ways with learning, like baking for math and, again, games with strategy, that kind of thing. Life is learning. So I just really want to encourage parents in that way. The other thing that I want to throw out there is to still be very careful with screen time. Now our kids are doing even more work online. It's very important that we're giving our kids those breaks that they need from screen time. It's really suggested that we're not on our screen for optimally a couple of hours before we go to bed in order to give our brains the rest that they need. So we still need to be really careful and monitor that screen time. Someone recently made a suggestion that I loved about starting to listen to more things again, listen to stories, listen to podcasts that are age appropriate for your family. Start listening to things again that don't always involve the video, using our other senses.
Yes.
Really important.
I know, Burdette, you're going to round that out. But speaking of listening, I know Audible is offering free books right now.
Yes.
And stuff. So
yeah, awesome.
It's great.
Yeah. So kind of bringing this all together in a way, in a practical way. Everybody has their own planning systems and so forth, but maybe through a time like this, a real simple planning system would just be, and I'm going to hold it up again, but again, it's going to be available online, but it's, as you can see, it just has the days of the week there. And then I just kind of put some markings in there that just kind of show blocks of time for different things, just as an example. But the things there are just, of course, church service, you can write that in. But the idea is that we're keeping up with some even scheduled routine.
Yes.
Our lives have a lot of routine in, and that's been jerked away right now. And so to intentionally put some routine back into our schedule, that we can put it on paper, see it, plan for it, and do it and stick with the schedule. There's something that keeps us feeling better even about our day. Instead of just kind of letting things go, we're actually putting it out, laying it out. So like what I put on here: family service project, family activity, family game night, family devotions, things like that. Now there's a lot of room there for a lot of other things to put in, but when we are intentional at planning that out, it really, I think, helps us get through times where that rhythm has been, that typical rhythm has been pulled away, that we're creating now a very intentional rhythm for our days.
I appreciate that, and see if you can add anything to this. But I think regular bedtime and wake time is important.
Yes.
Right.
For personal discipline. So getting enough sleep, but not getting too much sleep, and not little sleep. And so keeping the regular bedtime and wake time. Also, as you mentioned earlier, meal times, making sure that you continue to have that as a rhythm. I know for us, one part of our plan for the day is to get outside at some point in the day.
Absolutely.
And that's really important, because in this stay-at-home time, it feels like, we're stuck. Well, it's springtime, and so thank God we've actually got the space. Like today is a gorgeous day.
Right, it is.
Absolutely. And even if it's raining, if you have even a covered porch that you can go outside and stretch for a few minutes, take in some breaths of fresh air, it's very important. As far, and even down to so practical as our water intake right now, and watching our sugar intake too. All those things are really going to affect us and how we feel through our days.
And that does remind me, we are actually going to have one of these podcasts / talkcasts about fitness and talking about getting moving and what's time. So
awesome.
For us to bring it home, what's the one thing you recommend for families in this time? If there was one key takeaway, what would it be?
Well, and in a way, it pulls it together as well. And it's really just this: be intentional. Like, we can see this time as just, we're going to react to it. We're just going to let whatever happens, and then we just follow with the nothingness, or just kind of whatever happens. Or we can be proactive. And that's that intentional part. We can be proactive and make our schedule, make time for the things. Well, make time is easy now, but be purposeful about putting certain things in our days that help them to be productive, to help us feel good about ourselves, our day, the relationships that we have, that we are with pretty constantly now, and I think it overall can just be helpful to be very intentional during this time.
I like to think so. In the garden, God gave humanity stewardship, if you will, to care for the garden, care for the animals. In a way, like a plan or a routine is a way of caring for the garden that God has entrusted us.
Absolutely.
And so it's a way of being responsible for all that we've been graced with. And
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that takeaway. And go ahead.
That's right. I just want to add one more kind of final thought there, is that all of us are going to have our story of the coronavirus, the pandemic of 2020.
Yeah.
All of us are going to have that story, and how intentional we are is going to tell kind of what that story is like. This story can be a story that we're living, that is going to be a story of defeat, or a story of a lot of angry fighting, or a lot of just complaining about the kids being too active or something. Or we can be intentional and we can make our story a good story, because we're all going to have this story, and how we handle ourselves during this time is going to shape our story of the pandemic of 2020 for the rest of our lives.
Amen.
And so let's make it a good story, instead of just one where things fell apart more than they had to.
That was good. I want to just hit amen. Amen button on here.
We'll have to get one of those.
Yeah. Well, I want people to be able to connect with you afterwards. And so if you, again, are not connected to a small group, on Sunday mornings, Burdette and Nedra lead a class, and it's currently on Zoom at 11 o'clock. So if you go to stillness.com, you can find the link for that. And also, they're going to be doing a follow-up called Parenting Through the Pandemic, or some variant on that title. Email Nedra at nedra1221@gmail.com. And also, these two are really highly recommended therapists too. And so you can use that same email if you're interested in one-on-one counseling. And they didn't ask me to do this, but they are doing teletherapy during this time. So if you need to call and reach out, you can do that too. So thank you guys so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bless you. Bless you.